This female podcaster, Erica Dickerson, just levied some pretty serious accusations against Joe Budden. Erica is one half of the Good Moms Bad Decision podcast. Now, they are an up-and-coming podcast that's still struggling just a little bit. So Joe Budden decided to throw them an alley-oop and have them on their Patreon. Now, Joe Budden wasn't convinced at first to have them on, but through the convincing of his right-hand homie, Imani, he decided he was going to give them a chance and have them on their Patreon because they was going on a podcast tour and they needed all the publicity they could get. Before every Joe Budden podcast, they take a group picture, and this podcast wasn't any different. You see Erica Dickerson on the left and her co-host on the right. Now, it will be this picture that will cause all the drama we're currently covering today. Erica would state while in the process of taking that particular group picture that Joe Budden sexually harassed her in front of everybody.
We went to go take a picture, and this is before we start recording, and they line up on the skyline, and they were like, Erica, come over here and take a picture. And so I went over there, and I didn't really know where to get in between any of them. They were all kind of lined up, and I was like, I was just like, okay, I guess I'll just squeeze in here. And then out of nowhere, Joe says, you better watch out. You'll get fucked. And I said, oh, okay. Well, I was so caught off guard. I just said, Joe, stop. Like, don't do that. Come on. And he was just like, and everyone around just like didn't say anything. No one said shit. It was just like, this happens all the time and this is normal and no one's going to say anything.
I didn't hear this. I was out of earshot, so I was totally oblivious, even going into the episode that was said.
I don't know if this lady is telling the truth or not, but here's why this is particularly odd and doesn't really add up. So Erica stated that while in the process of taking a picture, she walked past Joe to try to get, information with everybody else, and that's when Joe Budden told her, watch out or you'll get effed. Well, here's the thing. Her co-host, who was right by her, as you see in the picture, like she's not a far distance away. Like she's right there. Her co-host is saying, I didn't hear this. I didn't hear Joe Budden say this. I have no recollection of this ever happening. You told me it happened, but I didn't hear it. How is that possible? How can Joe Budden say this and your co-host is literally right there? And she never heard it. Not only did the co-host never hear it, but nobody at the podcast heard it either. So essentially, this is her word against Joe. She's saying that Joe Budden said this in front of everybody and nobody said anything. Well, nobody said anything because nobody heard it, which is unusual if the statement was made in front of a group. But it gets a little bit more unusual because as they're recalling the experience at the Joe Budden podcast, they're speaking about Joe in glowing fashion. They call Joe friendly, call him hospitable, nice. They even claim that they went to dinner afterwards and they all had a great time. You don't go to dinner afterwards with somebody who you believe just sexually harassed you.
And honestly, before the tribe, he upheavaled some things I didn't realize about Joe. I mean, I thought he was pretty nice guy, pretty charming. He said some pretty diabolical things in the podcast, which I was expecting. But other than that, we went out to lunch after. Yeah. We joked. Yeah, it was fine.
No, he's always been really kind to us, even, in texts and all those things. And even when we came to go to his show, upon arrival to his.
Outside of the sexual harassment, man, he was a pretty good guy. Things are just not adding up, bro. And I'm not saying this woman is lying. I'm not saying she's telling a fib on Joe because Joe has somewhat of a track record. We can leave it at that. But in terms of this particular instance, bro, things are not adding up. So this entire thing also just seems really clout driven because as she's telling the story, mind you, this took place on a particular day, right? Now, the podcast didn't drop until like a week or two later. So she held on to speaking out against Joe Budden. So she held on to the secret of Joe Budden sexually harassed me when we were on his premises because according to her, she wanted to wait until the podcast come out because she didn't want to do anything that was going to jeopardize the podcast coming out. So you held your tongue about being sexually harassed because you want your abuser to release a podcast with you on it so you could get some clout from it. This is not how sexual harassment victims speak, bro. This is like some real clout-driven stuff that I'm not comfortable with.
Part of me wishes we didn't do it, to be honest, because I feel like as women, we have often just silenced ourselves because we need to in order to take our whatever, our career to the next level, to get the things that we need to get. I'm willing to sacrifice my feelings around this, sacrifice my better knowing around this, because we have a show in New York that I need to promote. We have a tour that I need to promote. And that was kind of a little bit of my mindset. And then, like, I am kind of disappointed in myself that I went forward with it. I mean, granted, and you can tell in the episode, the first like 20 minutes, even someone else said, like, Erica, I could tell like you were not fucking with it in the beginning. And I was true. Like, I was kind of checked out. I really was like, am I going to curse this nigga out? Am I going to say something? Am I going to call him out? Am I going to risk this episode not coming out?
She held her tongue until the podcast came out to secure that she got the clout from the Joe Budden podcast, despite the fact of her calling Joe Budden her abuser. Now, the whole rollout for this was really sus as well. So, by the way, they dropped these accusations on their Patreon. And not only did they drop it on their Patreon, how they dropped it on their Patreon is some nasty work, yo. Bruh, they was clickbaiting and leaving people on a cliffhanger as if, like, these, like, sexual harassment accusations against Joe Budden was, like, pay-per-view, yo. Here is the cliffhanger that they got on their Patreon about the Joe Budden situation. She goes on to say, want to know our real thoughts about this episode with Joe Budden? Well, we are just getting back home from tour. Rockstar moms are tired as F. However, we do want to share some thoughts about our time on Joe's podcast. We heard the comments on his Patreon have been pretty trash, and I'll be honest, during our recording, I was very disappointed by, well, actually, I'll just save our opinions and experience for a little episode that will drop this Tuesday here only to our Good Vibe tier members. All right. So listen, all right. You don't have the privilege of hearing this story about how Joe violated and abused her unless you paying that $10 to be a Good Vibe tier member. I'm not saying there's one way to heal or do things, but this is not how victims move, bruh. Like, at all. She made sure to be as vague and obscure as possible when she was speaking about her Joe Budden experience so she could clickbait and cliffhanger, everybody who wants to know what this horrible thing Joe did to her. Oh, they have to come and check it out on Tuesday. And made people wait days to finally hear her accusations against Joe Budden behind the paywall. And when asked about why she did this, her laughable excuse was, oh, I wanted to speak to my audience and warn other women.
So I'm just going to say this here. I know a lot of people who are not even part of our community would like me to comment on the reasons why I decided to speak my truth to my tribe on Patreon. And my sharing, as usual, is in the hopes that it gets to the women that have silence themselves, that have been forced to acknowledge and process disrespect in real time, for the women who have shoved their better beliefs underneath and inside of their bodies and their wombs because they had this idea of, well, let me just get this job done. Let me just do what I need to do.
You see, she says she hopes that other women, get alerted about this, but she put it behind a paywall, which is the opposite of, I want for other women to hear this. I want for this to go out as like a bad signal to all women out there who will possibly deal with this, right? That's the opposite, right? You see, you could have very easily put it on your YouTube and have the algorithm do its thing, right? And have no cap or limit on who hears it. But instead, she put it behind a paywall to limit who hears it, to grease up her pockets. So this wasn't about alerting women, bruh. Stop it. Now, Amani, who stuck his neck out for them to have them on their podcast, well, he spoke about this and yo, he's not, bruh. Yo, he obliterated them, bruh. Check this out, man.
In fact, I'm not even gonna call them young ladies. These bitches. I've tried to not go that route because I don't think anyone should just be called out their name just because you have a problem with them. But this is past having a problem. This is you doing something with the intent to tarnish and ruin a man and a platform that has not moved in that way, that's not looking to move in that way, and in all actuality has done everything to make women feel comfortable up there. So when I see shit like this happen, I have to call it for what it is. And I won't even say two bitches because I feel like the other young lady really didn't say much of anything. So I'm literally speaking to the one person who made that bullshit story up. Me, honestly, I think everyone looks at these two chicks as bullshit. And I don't even want to extend any more grace to them, giving them a platform of us even making them more relevant to what they are. But I'm 100% going to be aware that a lot of the things that we do up there instantly are going to affect Joe because he is the name and he's the brand and he's the person that typically most of the people are watching to see. So I got to be conscious that even though I think the things that I'm doing are really to benefit me or my outlook, it's going to essentially fall back on him in certain ways that he's not even prepared for. I didn't even ask for. Like, he didn't ask for those young ladies to be up there. That was me. And he had no level of even trying to make it a thing of them being up there. So even, I don't wish them any success. I hope their podcast fails. I hope they fail. I hope they don't eat for the next week. I hope that whatever that they believe that they're going to do great in life, it returns to them in a nightmare that they're not going to achieve it.
You guys are lucky.
Extremely
this
lucky.
man has a great platform and he chose the high road.
And he won't let us go.
Exactly. Because it's unfair to the people that really out there that go through shit. It's unfair. It's disgusting. You should be ashamed of yourself.
I'm not going to say she's lying or just outright dismiss her until all the facts come out, because people dismissed Olivia Dope. And Joe Budden pled out and settled that particular case, right? So, she could very well be telling the truth, but how she's going about things just isn't the right way to do it, man. Now, she could be lying, though. She could be lying because, the collab with Joe Budden had really poor reviews and she wanted to save face and make an excuse for why her performance was poor. And the best excuse she could probably come up with is, me and Joe, there was tension there was hostility. I wasn't comfortable. That's why I didn't perform up to par. Right? Or, it could be for clout to promote her tour. Who knows, man? But y'all let me know in the comment section, what do you guys think about this, all right? And if you're still watching, click on this video somewhere on my screen to find out how the Breakfast Club lost a lot of subscribers after dropping this new interview. Click on this video here to find out what I'm talking about. Out of here, folks. Peace.